Okay, as the bell ringer walked around, looked in, some of you have some sign errors in your answers. As we go through the first one, you want to do the multiplication first. So you have 6 times 3, that gives you 18, minus 4 times 5 is 20, and if you take that times 6, what do you get? 120. One person just had 120 as their answer. You still have that front term involved. So you have more negatives, and if you take 120 and subtract 18, you end up with 102. Some of you have positive 102. Should be negative 102. The next problem, you're going to perform your multiplication first in orders of operations. So as we look at the multiplication, the first term becomes 15. Bring down the plus 2, plus 4 times negative 2 is, oh, let's try that again. That's a nice 8. Negative 8. So 15 plus 2, you're going to have 17 and negative 8. What's your answer? 9. I think a couple of you had 6 for an answer. And then our last problem as we work through it, perform the multiplication first. How many of you see that as 4 times negative 5? Okay, how many see it as negative 4 times negative 5? Either way, you're going to get to the same answer. It may just be in the step that you see it. I covered this up and I see it as negative 4 times negative 5. So I do see it as that. But if you see it as 4 times negative 5, and then we also have the 3 times 10. So I'll bring down what does not represent the multiplication. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. This is where you got to be careful of some signs. 3 times 10 is 30. What happens right here? That's a plus. So you're going to have 13 plus 20 minus 30. So you get 33 for the positives. Negatives are 30. So you end up with 3 for an answer. Now that's from the last lesson. What we want to be able to do today is we want to build upon that. And we want to look at the next lesson. We're going to have symbols of inclusion. So we want to know what are all of the symbols of inclusions that we can think about. And then just orders of operations. What do? I'm going to work with symbols of inclusion first when we go through our orders of operations. So orders of operations we talked about the other day. Parentheses first. That is a symbol of inclusion. And then we're just going to do exponents, which they're not going to give you yet. Then you multiply and divide from left to right, add and subtract from left to right. So you've already worked with the multiplication and then the addition or subtraction. We're going to go up a level and we're going to include these symbols of inclusion. So what different symbols of inclusions do we have? Braces are 1. Parentheses are 1. Here's our braces. I'm going to put them in order. Before braces, what you would include is brackets. And then we're going to have braces. Are there any other symbols of inclusion that you can think of? What? Absolute value. So in our orders of operations, everything we have listed up on the board right now is what we want to work with first. You could almost talk about the fraction bar. When you talk about the fraction, you want to simplify the numerator and simplify the denominator. But they're not going to show it as actually you solve something in some type of symbol. So it's not included with that. We are going to get to some with fractions. But to simplify the numerator, simplify the denominator. So these are the first things that we want to do in orders of operations. We've already talked about it in the last lesson, but in every single set of parentheses, you had one number. and it was already simplified. So we look at an example. Orders of operations say we want to simplify inside the parentheses first. So inside our parentheses, everything else you're just going to bring straight down. It's going to be 4 times. If I were to read that expression, it's 4 times the quantity, 3 plus 2 minus 5 times the quantity, 6 minus 3. So what we want to do is we want to find 4 times something. We want that to be a single number, minus 5 times something, which I'm going to simplify down to a single number. So I look at it and I simplify in parentheses. Within the parentheses, you go back to your orders of operations. So it's 3 plus 2, 5. I look at the next set. What is 6 minus 3? 3. And that very first complicated expression now becomes 4 times 5 minus 5 times 3. Orders of operations say the next thing that we need to do is multiply. So I need to figure out, maybe I don't want to highlight. I need to figure out where is multiplication. It is 4 times 5 and 5 times 3. Some of you may see that as negative 5 times 3. That's okay. You're still going to get to the same value. If you do not, you're going to bring down this minus sign. And then I look, what is 4 times 5? 20. What is 5 times 3? 15. So your answer is 5. Go step by step by step. If we look at another example, we start with what part? Parentheses. So I'm going to look inside the parentheses and I want to simplify those values. We want to bring everything else down. So I have negative 3, and then I have a value in parentheses, minus 6 times a value in parentheses, minus 3. Simplify in the parentheses. What is 2 minus 3 plus 5? 4, because you're going to have positive 7 and negative 3. So I end up with 4. On the second set of parentheses, 4 plus 2, just add, and we have 6. Now it's down to an expression that you just had in the last assignment, where the next thing you do is multiplication. Your multiplication comes with negative 3 times 4, 6 times 6. So I'm going to bring down what I have not boxed. And now perform your multiplication. What's negative 3 times 4? Negative 12. What is 6 times 6? 36. So now I have negative 12 minus 36 minus 3. They're all negatives. What do you end up with? Negative how many? What's negative 12 and negative 36? Negative 51, because you have negative 48 and another 3 is negative 51. They're all negative, so add the numbers together and keep it negative. Question. Start with those parentheses first. Okay, going to give you a chance to work through this problem. I don't care if you do it on scratch paper, if you do it on the desktop. You can visit with your partner. I'll give you a minute to work through the problem. Go. Did moving my fingers and covering up stuff help anybody the other day? Did you get to see any of that? Probably not. Who saw that? You got to remember who saw that. Okay. Every time I go to say plus or minus, I'm going to look at splitting it. Some of you are struggling, I think. I don't know. I don't know where to go with this for some of you. Where are you going to start? If I read that problem, I'm just going to read it to you first. It's negative 2 times the quantity, negative 3 minus 3, times the quantity, negative 2 minus 4, minus the quantity, negative 3 minus 2, plus 3 times the quantity, 4 minus 2. So every time we have sets of parentheses, we want to simplify in those sets of parentheses. you're going to have to show some work. I think I mentioned that yesterday. I got on my soapbox yesterday for that. So we're just going to bring down everything. I have -2 and then my parentheses, which means I'm going to multiply by a value. And I'm going to multiply by another number. But I got to figure out what those numbers are. Minus a particular value that's in parentheses plus 3 times the value that's in parentheses. I just want to replace the values in parentheses. This is read as -3 minus 3. That's the same thing as -3 plus -3. What's that? -6. Over here I have -2 minus 4. Remember, those are team negatives. If you want to show it that way, you can, but those are team negatives, which give you -6. You're not multiplying inside those sets of parentheses. You're either adding or subtracting is all. Now, if I look in the next set of parentheses, that's like -3 plus -2, which gives you a value of -5. And in the last set of parentheses, 4 plus -2 is 2. Now I need to figure out where is all of my multiplication. Oh, thank you. I was like, I saw you give them something. I thought it was something with volleyball on Saturday or something. And I'm like, oh, wait.
Yeah. Leo started 8. Long you have summer. Long day.
Not any worse than last Saturday, too?
Yeah.
Actually, at least last Saturday wasn't that bad. All right, so we go through multiplication. This is all multiplication right there. The very first term. You have -2 times -6 times -6. You work with 2 numbers at a time. I am guessing you started with -2 times -6. What's -2 times -6? Positive 12. And you have to take that times -6. So what is positive 12 times -6? -72. So everything in the green box turns into -72. My other multiplication is right here, 3 times 2. So I'm going to bring down the minus, -5 plus. Now what is 3 times 2? 6. Question up to that point. The next thing is to look right here. What is the opposite of -5 or minus -5? Plus 5. So we have -72 plus 5 plus 6. You can group the positives together. How many positives do you have? These 2 right there, which gives you 11. So it's 72. You have more negatives, so your answer is going to be negative. And 72 minus 11 is 61. So your answer is -61. Here's some things. Somebody was showing their work. And here's one thing I noticed. Somebody forgot this 3 right there. Another thing that happened is we multiplied those values together inside the parentheses. But the values inside the parentheses are just addition or subtraction. Look at your cards when we had the black and the red cards, and you're grouping them together. That's all you're doing for that part right there. Other errors, positive times negative. You had a sign error with your 72. That's one little mistake that if I can see your work, I know what you're doing wrong. You multiplied. Okay, I'm going to give you the next problem, but then I'm going to go ahead and save while you are working. Maybe. I think the next one's a fraction one, though. Let's look at it. All right, what I want you to do for the fraction one is you're still going to go through the same thing. Maybe I better just do this one and then save it. They can give you the next one, which is fraction. So if we look at this particular problem, I want to simplify the numerator, simplify the denominator. So it's almost like you look at it. Let me see how I got it. Oh, no. You look at it as 2 separate problems. One of them is 5 times the quantity -5 plus 3. plus 7 times quantity, negative 5 plus 9 plus 2. The other problem is the denominator of 4, the quantity, 4 minus 2, plus 3 plus 5. Orders of operations say, what do you want to do first? Parentheses. So I'm going to find a single value to put inside each set of parentheses. What do I do with everything else in the problem? Move it down. We're going to bring it down in the problem. So we have 5 times a number, which I'm going to find because that's the highlighted region, plus 7 times a number, which I will find, plus 2, and then I have my fraction bar, and I have my parentheses for a number I'm going to find, plus 3 plus 5. So now I need to figure out what is in the parentheses. What's negative 2, or negative, I just told you the answer. What's negative 5 plus 3?
They won't even know.
Negative 2. I go to the next one, what's negative 5 and positive 9? It's a positive 9 and a negative 5. Positive 4. And what's 4 minus 2? 2. What's the next thing you want to do? Not divide yet, because this is a fraction. Think of it as a fraction, even though fraction means division. You have to get it down to a single numerator over a single denominator before you do that. So the next step you want to do is multiplication. So I'm going to find all of the multiplication that we have. Is that it? Or do you see any other multiplication? Because the problem is now 5 times negative 2, which is in green because I said times, plus 7 times 4, there's multiplication again, plus 2 over 2 plus 3 plus 5. So I'm going to perform the multiplication and keep everything else in black the same. All right, what is 5 times negative 2? Negative 10. I almost said the answer again. Then I have that plus sign, which I'm just going to bring down. What is 7 times 4? 28. And then I have plus 2 over 2 plus 3 plus 5. We need to simplify the numerator. If I simplify the numerator, team negative is 10 points. Team positive has how many? 30. So who wins? Positive by 20. The denominator, team negative has 0 points, right? Team positive has 10. So what is 20 divided by 10? 2. So the fraction bar, you almost work like a symbol of inclusion where you work with the numerator, you work with the denominator, and then as a final step, you can divide that if you can. If it was something like 20 over 30, you don't have to divide it, but you have to reduce it and make it 2/3. So if it looked like 20 over 30, I'm not saying go ahead and figure it out as a decimal. I'm just saying reduce it and write your answer as 2/3. Here, yeah, I don't care. You divide both by 10 and you get 2 over 1, which is just 2. Still do parentheses, but remember you're going to simplify the numerator and simplify the denominator. Now you have to be careful organizing yourself because some people simplify the numerator and they come off over here. I'm just going to do it in purple real quick. They come off over to the side and then you're going to go, oh, that's 5 times negative 2 plus 7 times 4 plus 2. And then they're going to say that's negative 10 plus 28 plus 2. And then they're going to say negative 10 plus 30. And then they're going to go to 20. And they're going to say they're done with the problem. So if you're going to do them separate, numerator off to the side separate, denominator off to the side separate, you better make sure you finish the problem. Because that's an error that students make. Okay, so now I'll give you this problem while I save the video so far.